Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Xiong. If you have not done so already, you can pause and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February, on China's heavily censored social media platforms, pro-invasion sentiments run rampant, with many posts and comments cheering on Russian President Vladimir Putin and condemning the West. But within the last 2 months, a fast-growing online translation campaign has emerged to make such content more visible to non-Chinese speakers. The move has upset Chinese Communist regime because it often has different messages for audiences at home versus abroad. Here is a short history of this young movement. The Great Translation Movement was established on February 24th. It originated on several Chinese language subreddits. Participants called for commentary that supported the Russian invasion of Ukraine on the Chinese internet to be translated and disseminated on foreign social media platforms. The purpose was to show the true face of Chinese netizens' populist sentiment. In addition, the movement called for monetary support for the Ukrainian people. Within the first week of its establishment, donations made publicly by the organizers on Reddit reached approximately $10,000. On March 2nd, one of the subreddits organizing the movement was shut down by Reddit. The reason? Exposing privacy of others. One of the participants claimed the ban was in response to the doxing of a Weibo user who allegedly blocked all money transactions via SWIFT from Shanghai to Ukraine. Some claimed that the Reddit ban was due to Chinese long-arm internet censorship. The Great Translation Movement then moved to other platforms such as Twitter and Pingtong. On March 8th, participants began to translate the material related to the Chinese government's COVID-19 mandates. The scope of the movement began to broaden from an anti-war message to one concerning freedom of speech. On March 19th, Pingtong employees were detained by the Chinese government after starting a channel for the movement on Pingtong's homepage. Since its Twitter account was created in early March, the Great Translation Movement has gained close to 140,000 followers and now receives hundreds of translations per day, submitted through direct messages. The account moderators operate from countries around the world, but most of them have lived in China and are fluent in Chinese. The moderators don't even know one another's identities or exact locations. When asked by outside media inquiries, they spoke on the condition of anonymity, citing fear of fines, detention, or jail time for themselves or their family members in mainland China. One moderator wrote, "Our goal is to raise awareness about the state of the public opinion in China, whether it is purely the result of spontaneous interactions of the Chinese people or a result of government censorship, manipulation, and propaganda. We want the outside world to know what is going on inside there." Chinese state media have labeled the project a smear campaign and point out that online discourse in the West is also laden with extremist views. Critics also say the tone of some of the Twitter accounts' posts could stoke hostility toward the Chinese and other Asians around the world. Liu Pengyu, spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington, said in a statement, "The information conveyed by the so-called Great Translation Movement is lopsided and does not truly reflect the whole picture." The moderators say they try to be as representative as possible by translating content that has lots of likes or comes from state media or influencers with millions of followers. Content is sourced primarily from Weibo, China's equivalent of Twitter, as well as the messaging app WeChat. Quora like Zhihu and Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. To ensure the veracity of submissions, moderators say they request links to the original posts and archive them in case the content is deleted online. Most of the content is translated into English, but the account also has posts in Japanese, German, Korean, French, Spanish, and Arabic. It has also begun posting about COVID-19 lockdowns in Shanghai and other parts of China. Jason Wu is an assistant professor of political science at Indiana University. He specializes in Chinese ideology and public opinion. Mr. Wu said that although extreme posts can prove popular on social media, China's web of internet controls may also empower those with certain opinions to speak out more than others. That makes it risky to equate high engagement with true public opinion, he said. The Chinese government has presented itself as neutral in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, expressing concerns about the humanitarian situation and calling for a peaceful solution without explicitly condemning Russia's action. But pro-Ukraine posts and hashtags appear to have been suppressed on Chinese platforms, and the Chinese state media have amplified disinformation and conspiracy theories that favor Russia. One volunteer translator wrote in a Chinese language interview that the ruling Communist Party uses external propaganda to glorify itself and internal propaganda to brainwash the masses, the volunteer said. The Chinese Communist Party has been supporting Russia both explicitly and implicitly in this war in Ukraine. Public opinion propaganda leads to the conclusion that Russia is righteous and has no choice but to invade. As a result of this propaganda, many Chinese people do not understand the situation and support Russia. That includes many Chinese living overseas because many rely heavily on Chinese state media for information and consume little to no English language news. The Chinese government has also spent billions on state media operations aimed at the overseas audience who speak English and other languages. But because internet users inside the mainland China Great Firewall are cut off from many of the biggest foreign internet platforms, including Facebook, Google, Twitter, and YouTube, it's difficult for information to flow the other way. Han Yang is a former Chinese diplomat who has lived in Australia since he was first stationed there in 1998. He said, "It's a very asymmetrical information warfare being played by the Chinese side. As you can see on Twitter, all these Chinese state media have hundreds of official accounts broadcasting their propaganda to the West every day. But we can't get our message across to the 1.4 billion Chinese living inside China." Mr. Yang began tweeting his own translation of Chinese posts and comments, many of which have since been retweeted by the Great Translation movement. While Mr. Yang shares the goals of the translation campaign, he said he disagrees with some of the members' sentiments. One moderator of the Twitter account was quoted in a Chinese language Douchewell article saying they hoped to expose the cruel and bloodthirsty nature of the Chinese population. Yang said comments like this paint all Chinese people with a broad brush and give ammunition to Chinese state media outlets condemning the movement. As an overseas Chinese myself, I know Chinese Communist regime has long presented different content to domestic and foreign audience. Non-Chinese who don't normally read Chinese might be made to believe what CCP make them to believe. With this new Great Translation movement, you can get a sense of how exactly the state media outlets are trying to rally public opinion domestically. And that makes it harder for the party to say, well, we really are neutral. For me, the movement is revealing how hypocritical the Chinese Communist regime is. The movement is creating a public relations crisis for CCP by violating the domestic and overseas information boundaries. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly.